For our chalice lighting words, please join with me as we affirm our own congregation's mission statement, printed in your order of service. We work together as a church to transform ourselves, our community, and our world by sharing love, pursuing justice, and seeking wonder. Ours is not a perfect community. We are wonderful and we are messy, a work in progress that earnestly tries hard to get it right. On behalf of this congregation, if you are here for the first time seeking a spiritual home or a safe space of inquiry and acceptance, I welcome you. And to the familiar faces I've known very well, I also welcome you. In all our beautiful diversity of experience and education, staged in our journeys, origins, sexualities, ages, and genders, I welcome you. I value who you are and what you bring.
I invite the young and the young at heart to come forward, right up here if you will, for a story about who makes the first move. Now, I wondered if this ever happened to you. You're on the outs with another person.
Oh, yeah. Young at heart.
Perhaps you had a fight with somebody, or maybe the other person snubbed you. That ever happened to you? Something like that? Now you sit on opposite sides of the room. You're over there, she's over there. Yeah? You look the other way when you see the person, and you wonder how this is ever going to end. Because you see, you like that other person, even though you're on the outs with them. You like them, right? You want to be friends again, but you just can't seem to make the first move. That ever happened to you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Maybe you're scared. Maybe the other person is scared of you. Maybe you just can't figure out how to apologize, huh? That happened to you? Yeah? Trust me, if it didn't happen to you, someday it will. You're waiting for her to make the first move, she's waiting for you. And on it goes. And you don't ever get together until one of you makes the first move. I have a little story about that. Let me tell you a little story about two people in a boat. It was old, it was rickety, it could barely float. The boat was out a-bobbing out on the deep blue sea, and the boy said to the girl,
Come sit next to me.
Not a chance of that. Last time I was over there, you almost knocked me flat. You said you were just playing and you tossed around the ball, but I did not like it. Not very much at all. It made me very mad, as I think you'll all agree. So if you want some company, you come next to me.
Well, the boat kept on a-floating. They were as quiet as they could be. And that boat kept on a-bobbing out there on the deep blue sea. So they sat. And they sat. And nothing did improve. And the girl said to the boy,
You gonna make your move?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. The last time I came over there, you almost knocked me in the drink. You know, down there in the water, there's fishies from the reef, sharks and barracudas, lots of stuff with scary teeth. But you didn't care. No, you want to be cool and jump up and down, breaking every boat and rule. And you rocked this boat from the bottom to the top, and you would have knocked us both in if I hadn't said to stop. So if you want to be sitting knee to knee, it's all up to you, girl. You come here to me.
And the boat kept on a-floating. They were as quiet as could be, and the boat kept on a-bobbing out on the deep blue sea. So they sat, and they sat. Angry eyes, what a spat!
You come to me.
No, you come to me.
It's all your fault.
You are as wrong as you can be.
Well, I gotta tell you, it was not a pretty sight. The two of them just sitting there spoiling for a fight. It was days, maybe weeks. They were sitting in the cold. It was dull. It was boring. It was getting really old.
Now, this is kind of pretty dumb. I'm hungry, and I'm thirsty, and my toes are getting numb. I don't know, so maybe I should go and sit with Jerkface anyway. It's better than freezing here another blasted day. All right, okay, I'll go.
But there was something that the girl kinda didn't know. The boy had been thinking too about what fools they were. He jumped up, and as she moved, he crashed right into her. The collision was a doozy. They both went kind of woozy, and they both yelled, "Hey!" And they fell right into the sea. Well, as they fell into the sea, they thought that they were dead, but something else was going on that felt real good instead. It turned out they were swimmers. They flipped and dove like fish. It was like they were dancing with a turn and a swish. Well, the boat was soon forgotten as they swam and danced and played, and farther from the boat they strayed, and deeper and farther still. Past reefs and rocks they darted. They didn't need the boat at all, since something new had started. Where they are now, well, I just can't say, because it's a big, wide sea. But I can say they are still out there, alive and happy and free. I've never gotten an applause for that story before. That's something. So what's going on with this story anyway? Huh? What's happening here? What can we learn from this story? Why were these two unwilling to make the first move? I got questions, you got answers, I'm sure. What would they lose by making the first move? Lose protection, maybe? They'd have to show that they were vulnerable. That's really attractive. Showing that your vulnerability, that's really attractive. You ever lost anything by making the first move? No, I don't think so. Maybe your pride. Yeah? Thanks for listening to my story.
Come to this community with all that you are. Your joys and your concerns are welcome here. We share our moments of joys and sorrows with us through using these candle cards. If you are with us in person, or by emailing Reverend Tiffany at minister@hvuuc.org with the words candle card in the subject line. Please make sure to indicate whether or not you would like the card read aloud in the service, which is being broadcast publicly on YouTube. I have three cards, actually. A card of concern for the health of our Earth as we look towards Earth Day tomorrow, Monday the 22nd. We hope you can find a moment of peace, enjoying a breeze, hugging a tree, smelling a flower, or finding some moment of beauty tomorrow. And throughout your life, some way you can continue to honor the planet that gives us life. A candle of sadness from Wendy Hurl. Alma Hester Smith passed away in December at the age of 97 in a senior living facility in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Alma was a longtime member of this congregation who served as our volunteer pianist and de facto music director into her 80s. She was a sweet, kind, and generous person, and she'll be very much missed. And a card of joy for Ellen Whitman and Cliff Campbell, who were married here yesterday. They have donated these beautiful flowers. Congratulations to them both. We wish them many years of happiness together. If you wish to light your own silent candle, approach the side of the table that is closest to you, and the closer candle keeper will assist you. Please light the candles at the back of the table first so no one has to reach over and open flame. If you wish for us to light a candle for you, please raise your hand until I acknowledge you, and I will ensure a candle is lit for your intention. And because our community is so much larger than those who are just in the building this morning, we light a candle to hold space for those who are not physically present with us, but are ever in our hearts and minds. Hearts and minds.
Southwestern Virginia. I saw there's a Bowman here on the administration bed. I don't know who you are, but you're from Southwest Virginia. Hey, we might be kin. Anyway, we're Long Hills Ramblers. We got 15 minutes to have fun with y'all, so we're going to start out with one of my dear over here. So, there's that. always changes it.
God laughs.
God laughs. But yeah, anyway, I saw that the thing was about tolerance. I thought it was really cool because I'm from Southwestern Virginia, and I'm a trans woman from Southwestern Virginia. And a lot of our music is based around like the queer experience in a rural area. And so this next song we're going to do is actually an a cappella song. It is about kind of my experience as a trans woman. And if you're from the mountains and familiar with balancing, I've always been really in love with that kind of stuff. And so this is a murder ballad I wrote about a transition. Is this taking a while? All right. Can I get it?
Just forget.
Have a banjo back, actually. I need somebody.
This is my workout for the year.
There you go. It's only 20 pounds. All you should. Oh, tell me, brother, what have I done? I've gone, I've killed our daddy's first son. Many years ago, back in those hills, was born a prodigal son with work boots to fill. He was raised upright, took it on the chin. He was raised upright on old Baptist hymns. Oh, tell me, sister, what have I done? I've gone and I've killed our daddy's first son. He was out all alone, turning over stones, while I found that poor boy and I led him on home. He didn't put up a fight, he didn't beg for his life, he just sat there staring in his eye, plunged in that knife. Oh, tell me, mama, what will they say? Will they think I've led our family astray? Will they find him a lamb, find clay on my hands? Will they value me less than they did that young man? Oh, tell me, Daddy, can you ever forgive the death of your son so your daughter could live? So in that same vein of politics in the mountains and stuff, I like to tell a story on that one. So we'll do a story and a little more song, if that's okay. We got the time for that. All right, so the story is, I typically, well, I think this is a little more normal. Usually at our shows I'm dressed very, like, high gown, I've got big boots on, so usually I start the story, but usually I'm dressed like this. But,
Little skirt, big
little skirt, big boots, fishnets, all the whole 9 yards. And usually, I've got family back home who doesn't fully understand the trans thing. They still love me. I think it's a really good example of like how they process this.
Practice tolerance.
Yeah, it's how they practice tolerance. My papa, he's a very sweet Southwest Virginian old man. The story goes a little bit differently. I'm trying to suit it for a church audience. So I was raised very Baptist, so I'm a little on edge here, and I do this in the best way possible. No offense to anyone here, it's just a little different. That's okay. You know, I learned tolerance.
Us too. We understand.
Yeah, trust me,
No
no worries.
So one day, I was going over there. Typically, I'm just very conservative because we'd be working on the truck, or we'd be, pulling peas, or we'd be, breaking beans, or we'd be chopping corn, or we'd be in the garden, we'd be doing something outdoors. So I don't need to dress up that much anyway. So when I went over there one time, I was getting ready for a date, or I'd been got ready for a date, and I was about to go on a date. And I had to borrow a ladder, and I feel like that's relevant.
As you do.
As you do. Borrow a ladder from your papa. And I go over there, and I'm dressed, for lack of a better word,
Provocative.
provocative. Thank you. Southwest Virginia woman thinks, well, I think something I'm not going to say here. I think, oh no. Papa looks at me, and I'm thinking, oh no, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? This is bad. And he looks at me. I'm going to do his accent as best as possible, not because I think it adds comedic effect, but because it's like a way that I show love for him, because his accent's one of my favorite things in the world. He goes, nah. Dad, he calls me my dad, not because it's a mean thing. He doesn't understand it. He's 85. He's from Franklin County, Virginia, and that's just how he is. He goes, nah, Dad, I don't hate you just like a girl, which is like a win. And my mom Southwest Virginia pop. He's like, yeah, it's all right. He goes, nah, Dad, I don't hate you just like a girl, but please. And I got real scared at that point because he said, please. I've always heard him say please to two people, and that's God and his wife. And so I'm terrified now. And he goes, nah, definitely. I don't care if you dress like a girl, but please. And there's just affectation to his accent. Settled in that part of the Blue Ridge where his OUs are a little bit extended about, I can't think of the other words that have that right now, so I want to use the story. Shout, yeah, there we go. Out. But yeah, he goes, nah, deadly. I don't care if you dress like a girl, but please, in my house, don't dress like a hussy.
Sing the last part.
Oh,
That's the funniest part.
Closest that man's ever said to I love you.
What's all we do?
We're doing the tuning song because I'm tuning.
I got, do y'all like jokes?
Yeah.
Play some jokes? Alright. So, when you play the banjo, 50% of the time is spent tuning it, and 50% of the time is spent playing it out of tune. We just did Cripple Creek.
Like the way we actually do it.
Okay. Alright. Well, hold on. Let me. Now I have to play the tune song. I'm done though. Alright. Oh, no. Yes, boss.
But these people, they can't. Oh, you should say to come here to hear bluegrass, but I guess I'll technically do that today. But,
Okay.
they asked us here to play bluegrass, not this hippie stuff. Not this slow hippie stuff. So,
All right. Okay. Do I get to take it now?
you're taking a pay decrease, but that's fine.
All right.
That's okay too.
I got to follow that. Very nice, thank you. My topic this morning is tolerance, and in the sermon, I pose the question, is tolerance passé? I begin with a rather unusual reading, unusual in that it contains pictures, and unusual in that you can read it right along with me. I thought to ask Calvin and Hobbes for their take on tolerance. As they often do in the winter, Calvin and Hobbes are walking along, and as they trudge through the snow, Hobbes asks Calvin, "How are you doing on your New Year's resolutions?" And Calvin reveals that he didn't make any. He explains, "You see, in order to improve oneself, one must have some idea of what is good. That implies certain values." Then Calvin gets on his soapbox. But as we all know, values are relative. Every system of belief is equally valid, and we need to tolerate diversity. Virtue isn't better than vice, it's just different. Hobbes, as usual, considers the implications. He says, "I don't know if I can tolerate that much tolerance." Calvin, as usual, tries to justify his adolescent mischief. He says, "I refuse to be victimized by notions of virtuous behavior." So, just to be sure that everybody's on the same page, a little history is in order. This story is about our Unitarian ancestors. I'll talk about our Universalist ancestors at another time. A small U, Unitarian, is someone who denies the doctrine of the Trinity. A Unitarian rejects the idea of three divine beings in one. And for that matter, Jews and Muslims are Unitarians. According to the Catholic Church, Unitarianism is a heresy. The cardinals decided that in the year 325 at the Council of Nicaea. Unitarian ideas were repressed for many centuries, but at the time of the Reformation, it was among the many heretical ideas that became popular once again. And there are three classic characteristics of Unitarians: the use of reason in religious matters, freedom of conscience, and tolerance for other beliefs. Our Unitarian forebears were thinkers. They reasoned things out for themselves, and they had a devil of a time with the concept of three beings existing in one. It was illogical, had no basis in the Bible, and there were no Trinity. Then it follows that Jesus is not divine, not God. Perhaps you can see why this kind of thinking got people in trouble with the church. Free thinkers and other heretics were persecuted either by the Pope or by the Prince. At this time, nations were becoming more important in history, and princes wanted everybody in their principalities to profess the same religion. So they killed off anyone who would not convert to the state religion. This prompted Unitarians to develop the second characteristic, freedom of conscience. They believed that people ought not to be obliged by force to believe what the king believed, or the Pope. They maintained that people ought to be able to make up their own ideas, make up their own minds about religious matters. And from that necessarily flows the last characteristic, tolerance for what others believe. For if you maintain that you should have freedom of conscience, you can't very well deny it to somebody else. And after the Reformation in Europe, people tended to group themselves together in communities of common belief. John Calvin ran his brand of Reformed Christianity in Geneva, and his followers were known as Calvinists. Ulrich Zwingli held sway in Zurich, Martin Luther in Germany, and in time more leaders appeared on the face of Christianity. They changed as often as a new idea came into practice. In this sea of Christianity, Unitarians were tiny little fish, very small minority. There was a Unitarian group in Poland, centered in the town of Raków in the 16th century, and later a group that is still today alive and well in Romania, but mostly they were a minority and were run out of town. Being the minority, you can understand why they stood for tolerance, because they were rarely tolerated, except for one brief shining moment. It was not Camelot, but another kingdom in Transylvania. Until the 16th century, Transylvania was Catholic, but it converted to Protestantism after 1520, when the first Lutheran books and missionaries arrived. And in 1561, John Sigismund became king of Transylvania, the first and only Unitarian king in history. John was frail and artistic, an accomplished linguist, and a superior monarch. Above all, he was deeply interested in religion and sought to pacify the conflicts between Roman Catholics, the Greek Orthodox, the Lutherans, the Calvinists, and the Unitarians in his kingdom. Out of personal conviction, therefore, and practical political considerations, he fostered a policy of open discussion and broad toleration of all viewpoints, which made Transylvania the freest country in Europe in religious matters at that time. He disestablished the Catholic Church in Transylvania, and he issued his famous Act of Religious Tolerance and Freedom of Conscience. It reads, "None of the superintendents or others shall abuse the preachers. No one shall be reviled for his religion by anyone according to the previous statutes, and it was not permitted that anyone should threaten anyone else by imprisonment or by removal from his post for teaching. For faith is the gift of God. This comes from hearing, which hearing is the word of God." Those words from the Edict of Torah. Although many Unitarians would claim that this is the first sovereign proclamation of religious liberty, it is not all that it appears. Despite its universal language, the edict legally applied only to the four well-connected groups at the time: Catholics, Lutherans, Calvinists, and Unitarians. Other groups without political representation, such as Jews or Muslims, and especially the Eastern Orthodox, were tolerated, but not granted any legal guarantees. Moreover, the edict speaks of preachers and congregations, but not individual people. It does not guarantee the free exercise of personal religious convictions. Unitarian theology came from Eastern Europe, and the notion of religious tolerance spread westward to England and ultimately to America. The Puritans who settled in New England and others who settled further south were of several differing faiths. There were Baptists, Quakers, Calvinists, Congregationalists, Lutherans, Jews, and a lot of unchurched folk, and Unitarians. The colonies were first and foremost a commercial enterprise designed to remove resources from the land and ship them back to England. So in order to make money, everyone had to get along. Instituting a religious pogrom or denigrating your neighbor's religion would surely rock the boat and bring everyone down. Then came the revolution. But money-making enterprises didn't stop. What stopped was the shipping of the money back to England. Everyone understood that tolerance was critical to the success of the new country, and that is one reason why this country's constitution made it a secular state. So from the beginning of the United States and Canada as well, tolerance was a notion that supported the free enterprise system and allowed everyone to succeed. It was especially important to minorities like the Jews, the Amish, the Mennonites, and the Unitarians. So that's the background and the history of religious tolerance. Now, one of my favorite techniques for understanding something, a visit to the dictionary. Like many words that entered English after the Battle of Hastings, tolerance comes from the French, and before that, from the Latin. The Latin root tolerare means to bear, to endure. Before Latin, the root of tolerare in a language spoken about 6,000 years ago in the Middle East, is a word meaning to lift or support, and it has derivatives referring to weights, measures, and money. From that root, we also have toll, retaliate, atlas, and translate. Tolerance is the capacity for or the practice of recognizing the rights and beliefs of others, a variation from the standard, the capacity to endure hardship. You will remember that I said we would explore the notion of tolerance being passé. The article that started this sermon appeared in an issue of the magazine Free Inquiry, a publication of the Council for Secular Humanism. The writer is Stephen Gallagher, a philosopher living in North Carolina, and he says some aspects of tolerance are dubious at best and often dangerous. He argues that tolerance assumes that the tolerator is in some position of authority, or at least the tolerator got there first. He writes, you're on. Yeah, you're reading. Okay, I'll do it. Okay. He writes these words: tolerance presumes a patronizing attitude on the part of the person who is tolerating the other. The tolerator no doubt feels that his motives are pure, and his attitude to the other is one of open equality. The tolerant, non-judgmental, therapeutic permission to be different appears to some of the others as a condescending act of charity. From the perspective of the other, being tolerated is not going to engender any warm feelings of inclusion or understanding. At its worst, the tolerator is doing the other a favor. Tolerance is by definition one-sided. The tolerator graciously decides to tolerate the other. The other has no say in the matter, nor does the other have the power to return the favor. Tolerance is thus a more or less naked deployment of power. Perhaps most dangerously, tolerance is revocable at will. The tolerator, possessing all the power in the exchange, can choose at any time to stop tolerating the other. The other, the weaker party in the exchange, has no recourse. The religious nature and heritage of tolerance make it a paternalistic gesture in which the other is not accepted as an equal partner, but rather subordinated, perhaps assimilated, often persecuted, and always misunderstood. Tolerance, as a secular virtue, is nothing more than a palatable wrapper for the mandate that the good person must sometimes tolerate others, and sometimes not. The words of James Gallagher. Talk about your withering attack, but I take his point. As a matter of fact, I sort of agree with him. But what's the alternative? If tolerance is a one-sided, arrogant, and paternalistic display of power, what virtue could replace it? What should we develop in its place? Do we blindly accept one and all to the life of society? I say no. Universal acceptance doesn't work. There are limits to what we can tolerate in civil society. Katha Pollitt writes these words in The Nation. Militant Islam may be the beginning of the end for multiculturalism, the live and let live philosophy that says, why can't we all enjoy our differences? Well, ethnic food and world music are all very well, but fatwas and amputations and suicide bombings just don't put a smile on the day. The words of Katha Pollitt. In our reading, Hobbes suggests that too much tolerance can lead to mayhem. And to underscore his point, take Theo van Gogh, the Dutch film director killed in an Amsterdam street by a Muslim fanatic. It would seem that tolerance overwhelms Hobbes, and maybe it died in the street along with Van Gogh. Should we, as Unitarian Universalists, accept one and all? Can we do that?
I don't think so. I think there must be another way of living together, but it must also be universal in at least one respect. If we avow freedom of belief, it follows that we must coexist with people who believe differently. I don't see any alternative to that logical progression. I think it's real easy to tolerate different beliefs. I mean, what's the big deal, right? I stand here, a Muslim's over there, a Baptist over here, and a Buddhist right there, and an atheist over there. I mean, we all stand around tolerating each other, right? No problem. No problem with belief. No problem with belief, none at all. The problem comes with behavior. It's not what you think that could upset me. It's what you do. It seems to me that what people don't often tolerate very well is behavior, especially behavior that interrupts civil life. Shooting, stabbing, and slashing the throat of Theo Van Gogh, for instance. Issuing a fatwa on Salman Rushdie. Persecuting Russian Jews at the point of a sword. Destroying Muslims in Bosnia. Lynchings in the American South. Surprise missiles. Gaza. Before we find another word for tolerance, we must separate belief from behavior, and we must agree to some standards for our life together. We could take a lesson from the colonists, who refrained from noxious behavior in order to live together and build a future. Back in 1776, when the frontier was nearly overwhelming, it was natural to rely upon your neighbor. You got to rely on your neighbor, regardless of their religion. They help you raise a barn, fight off bears, stand up to the redcoats and other dangers. Back in 1776, it was easier to see something that I allude to quite often, that we're all in this together. We're all in this together. I think that's hard to see today. It's hard to see because of our culture of individuality and our single-minded focus on our own futures. Rare is the person who understands our seventh principle in all its implications. The seventh principle is printed in your hymnal, that's the gray one, on page X, that's Roman numeral 10. In the front, 3 pages before the first hymn, it reads, "We affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part." The implication there is that we're all in this together. I won't have a future without you. You won't have a future without me. So what's the alternative to tolerance? I am drawn to the word hospitality. Instead of being tolerant, why couldn't we be hospitable? All the illusions of arrogance, one-sidedness, paternalism, power, they're all gone with hospitality. There's an element of care in hospitality. There's an element of providing for the other instead of merely tolerating. There's an element of decency. Now, the etymology of hospitality, that's fascinating. Going back through the French and the Latin again, even before the Greek, to that Indo-European language spoken 6,000 years ago, the root of hospitality means host and guest. More properly, it means someone with whom one has reciprocal duties of hospitality. I like that phrase, reciprocal duties of hospitality. The interdependent web is implied in that phrase. Interdependent, host and guest. From that root word, we get our words host, guest, hotel, and hostel. So we could be hospitable, acting as both host and guest. Unitarians could then be characterized as being reasonable, standing for freedom of conscience, and being hospitable. So let us be more than tolerant, more than accepting, more than understanding. Let's be hospitable. Let's be both guest and host. As host, my duty is to welcome you as my guest, to include you in my life, and to make you feel comfortable. I should give you some refreshment and perhaps a quiet place to take a break. As a guest, your duty is even greater. You must find a way to fit in comfortably into my life, making neither a fuss nor a ruckus about all that you're giving up to be here with me. You must work to be polite and gracious and thankful. We must both work to make the other a good host or a good guest. Now that's something to think about. To act towards others as both a host and a guest. What would that look like?
We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside of these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Thank you for being here with us today and sharing the energy of Laurel Hills Ramblers. Thank you. And pondering together these deep questions on tolerance and hospitality.
Laurel Hills Ramblers will share their talents here in this service one last time, and this is also when we will pass the offering plate. The contributions that you make to us during the offering supports the ways that we build each other up within this community and also gives us the resources we need to stretch out into the wider world, to make a positive impact, to be gracious hosts and gracious guests to this wonderful community. If you're making a pledge payment, please mark it as such. And thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you so much for being with us here today. This next one is probably a song a lot of y'all heard. It's our little version of it. I was sitting
benediction this morning is a short little story about seeing the results. When we are moved to provide service, we don't often see the results. But what we do in service does have results. It's just that they might be enjoyed by others. There was a woman who wanted peace in the world, and peace in her heart, and all sorts of good things. But she was frustrated. The world seemed to be falling apart. She would read the newspapers and get really depressed. One day, she decided to go shopping, so she went downtown and found a little store. She walked in and saw a man behind the counter. "Do you work here?" And the man said, "I own the store." "Oh," she said, "what do you sell in here?" The man smiled. "Oh, just about everything. Anything you want. What do you want?" She said, "Well, I don't know." "Well," he said, "feel free to look around. Walk up and down the aisles, make a list. See what it is that you want. Then come back here and we'll see what we can do for you." So she did just that. Walked up and down the aisles. She found peace on earth. She found the end of war, the elimination of disease, the eradication of hunger and poverty. She found justice, equitable treatment for everybody. No more drug abuse, social harmony, clean air, clean water, no potholes, elections with no negative advertising, no traffic cameras. Everybody hits the lottery, renewable energy, and the careful use of resources. Oh, she wrote it all down furiously. And by the time she got back to the counter, she had a very long list. The owner of the store took the list, looked through it, looked up at her and smiled and said, "No problem." And then he bent down behind the counter and picked out all sorts of things, stood up and laid out in front of her about 50 small little clear see-through packets. You know, the kind you get little tiny things in. He put them all out there on the counter. She said, "What are these?" He said, "These are seed packets. This is a place of dreams. You come here, you see what it looks like, and I give you the seeds. You plant the seeds, you go home, you nurture them, help them grow, and in time, somebody else reaps the benefits." "Oh," she said. And the store owner says, "Are you disappointed?" "Well," she said, "I was hoping to see these before I die." And the store owner smiled and said, "Your ancestors felt the same way. But that's not always possible. What's more important is to work for your dreams today. Plant these seeds. You will benefit in other ways."